Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 120. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
All right, welcome back to part 2 of our Murder Ballad Roulette episode, part 3, something like that.
Don't worry about the parts. You're getting some good stories.
Yes, it's funny how I was thinking about when I was typing up and editing the first half, I was sitting there thinking about how it reminds me of something like the Deathly Hallows part 1 and 2. Like we split something up that maybe shouldn't have been split, but we did it anyway.
Yep.
You know,
we'll make it work.
Yeah, we're all good. It's all good. So we have the other 3 episodes for the roulette, for other 3 cases for the roulette episode. Wow. I said that in the first one too, and I was like, I'm just going to leave that in. I'm not editing out the word episodes. Yeah, it happens. But so
it is what it is.
Yeah, whatever. We're doing our thing. So Joyous has got the first case this week as well, so take it away.
All right, so our first case this week takes us to Mongolia.
That's good luck with the pronunciations.
Well, don't worry. I Googled. It still might not be great, but we're going to try. So this case is the case of Sanjusurengen Zorig. And this is, Zorig is actually the first name.
Okay, so it's another one of those cultures where they typically use the last name first?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I couldn't find a lot of information about this one, but the way that he is referred to, I am like 90% certain Zorg is his first name. So
well, the same was
that's
true.
What I'm going to go with.
Yeah, the same was true with Korea. Like every time when I did the Frog Boys of Korea or watching the Physical 100 thing on Netflix, they always do, like it's always the last name first. So that's interesting. So it's probably the same. It's the same region of the world, kind of, sort of. So
that's true. That does make it make extra sense.
Yeah.
Zorg was born on April 20th, 1962 in Mongolia. His grandfather was a Russian geographer and ethnographer who had come to Mongolia as a part of an expedition. Not too far from Russia. They do share a border.
Yeah, I just looked up at the map. I was like, oh yeah, that's right there. Yep.
Yeah, they're right on each other.
Which is funny because when I watched, side note, when I watched there was a Netflix show, I think, it was basically the story of Marco Polo. And, you know, they have that whole route that he took through wherever to get to Mongolia. I thought it was further away from Russia than it was. I just never bothered to look up at a map and confirm that. But now I'm like kicking myself for not realizing that.
Right. Sometimes I realize that my entire world geography knowledge is just based on playing the game Risk as a child, and that's actually not a modern map or an accurate map.
No, but
that's incredible.
In your defense, I think I started playing that game when I was like 10-ish, and I was convinced there were only 4 countries in South America because of that map. So
yes, literally. And I really thought that there was a place called, what was like Yakutsk or something?
Yakutsk. I think that's like a region in that part of Russia, though. I do think that makes sense. I do think Irkutsk and Yakutsk, I think those are parts of Russia, because what's Kamchatka, that's another one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think those are officially like provinces or something, but so there is some truth to that.
And we love education on this podcast.
Yes, we do. There's your Risk education, everyone.
Yeah,
we just get a little bit We just get a little bit darker with our education here.
Today's a lighthearted.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll start you off with geography, and then it's going to get dark.
All right.
With communism.
That's lovely.
Well, we are talking about starting in 1960s Mongolia. This is communist era.
Right, and they're right dead smack in between two big communist countries, so.
Exactly. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about their democratic revolution.
All right, let's do it.
So the grandfather I was just talking about was actually a victim of Soviet purges. So he left his daughter, Dorj Palam, who was Zorg's mother, an orphan. So this definitely like informed his perspective of the world.
Okay.
Zorg's mother starred in a popular Mongolian movie before she married Sanjasurin, who was a Mongolian State University professor. They had 3 children. Zorg was the second, and he attended schools. They were all Russian language schools. So he attended school in Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia.
Okay.
And then starting in 1980, he studied philosophy in Moscow at the Moscow State University.
I think it's interesting that Mongolia had so many Russian-speaking schools. Or am I?
Well, they do border.
That's true. You're right. I keep forgetting that. You're right.
And especially in a time where, like, I will admit I'm not the most educated about like communist era Asia, but considering the Soviet Union being such a large power, right in between them and China, like it wouldn't surprise me that
that's true. Like, I didn't think that
cultural imperialism would be happening.
Right.
But that's also, don't quote me on that. That is just my my guess.
Your educated guess, yes.
My roughly educated guess. After getting his degree there, he worked as an instructor for the Mongolian Revolutionary Youth League in Ulaanbaatar. And then in 1986, he became a lecturer for scientific communism at the Mongolian State University.
That's a terrifying title.
What does that mean? That caught my attention right away.
I don't know. So like this is again something I'm going to have to make an educated stab at. I would assume that would mean like a scientific study of the effectiveness of communism, like actually using measures and variables and things like that and control to study whether something's actually working. Because like I took a college course about scientific philosophy, and it was like philosophy from a scientific lens, so I'd assume it's something like that. In 1988, he founded the New Generation Group, which was a group of young dissidents dedicated to spreading democracy in Mongolia. So his studies of communism are leading him to say, okay, like, we want to move towards democracy.
Right, which I would assume most people would want. But, I might be wrong on that one.
There are appeals of all systems, I guess.
Yes, I guess.
And if one of them's not working well, then people are going to want another option.
Exactly.
So after the formation of this group, he started to play a leading role in the events that led up to Mongolia's actual adoption of a democratic multi-party system.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. And so in 1989, on the 10th of December, which was a month after the Berlin Wall fell, so there's all sorts of momentum happening in this movement.
Yes.
Zorg led a group of 200 activists in a public protest demanding a free market economy and free elections.
And that well, again, it's Mongolia, not Russia. So I was going to say, I'm amazed that didn't lead to like violence, but I forgot. We're in Mongolia.
Right. Well, that's it. It's a good question you have. Hold on to that. So the protests continued, and in January 1990, Zorg and his fellow Mongolian Democrat dissidents began staging weekend protests in Sukbatar Square, which is the center of Ulaanbaatar, which is, again, the capital. The protests started small, but they started to grow into very large crowds as time continued and passed into February. And as they grew, tensions increased with the communist government as they were considering crushing them with force. So that aforementioned violence.
Yes.
Shit. Okay.
Which, I mean, that's what tends to happen as protests get big.
Right. And again, it makes me think of, and this would have been roughly the same time, that moment in China in Tiananmen Square with the guy standing in front of the tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
At one of the protests, when protesters were scuffling with soldiers and an outbreak of violence seemed like it was likely to happen, Zorg took a megaphone, sat atop a friend's shoulders to make sure that he was visible to everyone, and yelled to the crowd and called for calm. And it actually worked, and they like averted violence at this protest, which
Holy crap.
is kind of amazing that actually worked.
That is incredible.
I'm surprised he didn't. I'm surprised he didn't become a target.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second he was up in there and they're like, oh, he's the leader, I'm surprised someone didn't take a shot.
Right. A picture of Zorig, which you can look up if you want. It's an iconic picture of him addressing the protesters, became a famous symbol of Mongolia's peaceful revolution.
Nice. We'll definitely post that on our Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a cool picture. And it's even more cool that like it worked, that a peaceful revolution overthrew communism in the country.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really, really cool. So in March, the Mongolian Politburo, which is the like communist regime party, resigned, and that was the end of one-party rule in Mongolia.
Which is awesome. That's friggin' phenomenal.
Yeah, it rocks. So yeah, the people love Zorig. He was a symbol of the peaceful revolution. So as soon as they create this new government, Zorig was elected into the People's Great Chorale, which is like the
like their parliament or Congress or something.
Yeah, exactly. He was reelected into it in both 1992 and 1996 as a member of the Democratic Union. However, he questioned the pace of the free market reforms that were happening in Mongolia, that the Democrats were doing. He was concerned that the reforms weren't fair and would push too many Mongolians below the poverty line.
Interesting.
Which, in a way, makes sense, because if you make your free market a little too free, then it just is wealth concentrating at the top, and then you just created, oligarchy instead of communism, and like, great, wow, we won.
Yeah, that doesn't sound familiar at all.
No, I wouldn't know what that looks like, and I don't live in a country where that's exactly what's happening.
I don't know what you're talking about. No,
I don't know. It's so weird.
Foreign to me.
Yes. In 1998, Zorig became Mongolia's Minister for Infrastructure. However, that year was a year of great political crisis in Mongolia. And this is a tough name, so bear with me. Sakyajin Elbegdorj became the new Prime Minister of Mongolia in April of 1998. And one of his first decisions was he sold the state-owned bank to a private bank that was owned by Mongolian Democrats. Which, wow, what a great solution to privatize the government.
Yeah, and sounds like it.
Yeah, so obviously Zorig is against this because goes along with that same vibe of, okay, maybe that's a little too releasing power to the wealthy instead of, having a government that's strong and democratic. So members of the other party, which was the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party, walked out in protest, and Elbegdorj, the Democrat, no longer had a working majority, and he was forced to resign.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, so the parties then conferred, and then in closed meetings, they were able to agree on putting Zorig, who was the infrastructure minister, as their compromise candidate to be the new prime minister, because he was, a pretty unifying candidate.
Gotcha.
The announcement was scheduled to happen on Monday, the 5th of October, but unfortunately, Zorig was murdered on Friday, the 2nd of October in 1998.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I'm surprised they didn't do it sooner.
Yeah. Well, it hadn't even been announced to the public yet. So, unfortunately, I won't have many more details. But as for the act itself, 2 assailants entered his apartment, tied up his wife, and then waited for him to get home. As soon as he got through the door, they jumped on him and stabbed him 16 times, including 3 stab wounds to the heart.
Oh, shit.
Oh, God.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Just coming home one day.
Wow.
The assailants stole a bottle of vinegar and a bottle of soy sauce from the fridge and then fled the apartment.
Seriously?
Are those hard to come by?
Yeah, it's like the weirdest detail.
Are those hard to come by in Mongolia? It's really weird.
No, those are like literally staples of the diet.
All right.
So
yeah, that's really weird.
Very odd, but of all the details we know, that's one of them. 4 days after the murder, mourners crowded Sukbatar Square, which was the one where he made his iconic like calming down of the crowd, and people held candlelight vigils for him.
He sounds like he should be honored as a hero.
Yeah. And so they did honor him as a hero. And one of the ways was they erected a statue of him in Ulaanbaatar, right across the street from their central post office. And the statue faces towards the government palace, which symbolized his morning walk towards his workplace and like his service to the country.
Well, that's awesome. I mean,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And every year on the day of his death, flowers are placed at the statue, and it's a big event attended by his family, friends, politicians, and other citizens.
Nice. It's interesting when we get to talk about something and there's actually like a national response to it that's like honored, versus like, like for here in the US, we often will pass laws with someone's name attached to them, but it's nice to hear something like that, but he was a big political figure, so it makes more sense.
Yeah, like definitely a very important person. Sadly, his murder remained unsolved for 19 years until December of 2016. However, we don't know that many details because in 2016, the district court had a closed hearing in which they convicted 3 individuals of the murder.
Oh. Were they scapegoats, or did they have actual evidence, or like what are we looking at?
Excellent question. We don't really know. It was a closed hearing, and there's a lot of people who take issue with that. It was a period of 6 weeks that resulted in a guilty verdict. The defendants were each given prison sentences of between 24 and 25 years. And yeah, a lot of people took issue with this. The deputy prime minister, politicians, victims' family, all had an issue with the decision to hold the trial behind closed doors.
Did they say why they did that?
No.
Wow.
Or not that I could find. I mean, a lot of the reporting on this is in Russian, so I could only read what stuff like has been translated to English.
And not only that, but other countries don't have the open, free press like we do. And, there's no like Freedom of Information Acts or anything. So they don't have to, other countries don't have to reveal anything.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, if ours doesn't want to reveal something, it won't.
Exactly. So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, so a country like Mongolia, especially stuck in between 2 communist powers, they're probably not going to reveal much. I'm surprised we know what we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big problems with a lot of these countries where you try looking into anything and if you get any information, it's usually just whatever happened in the public eye that they can't hide.
Yeah.
So yeah. Because like you were just saying, like the government doesn't want to tell us. It's like the JFK assassination. How much of that is still redacted, Exactly.
Actually, one of the sources I looked at talked about how this assassination was it was definitely likened to the JFK assassination in terms of like its impact and like the importance of this man to the country.
Right.
It's kind of like, that'd be considered like their equivalent of that.
Which again makes 100% sense because, and as you were talking about it, that's kind of what I kept coming back to.
Mm-hmm.
And we never.
That or like a Martin Luther King assassination because he was also like a revolutionary bringing about change. I feel like that definitely like feels the most like ideologically similar.
Yeah, I was gonna say now that you've said, I didn't even think about Martin Luther King until you said it. Now that that's a much more apt comparison.
Yeah, and that is the case of Sanjay Surengan Zorig.
Wow, and I gotta tell you, that's some awesome pronunciation. You might still be wrong, but it sounded pretty good. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, incredible. At least I said it confidently. So if any listener can find a source of a better pronunciation, if anyone speaks Russian, let me know how I did.
Right. I'm about to do a case from Turkey right now. And I have to be honest, if I had just said it the way it's written from our dialect, I would have mispronounced the hell out of these words.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm glad I went through. I found a really interesting Turkish pronunciation app, and I could slow it down to help me out, and then I spelled things out phonetically. But yeah.
Oh, wow.
That is very helpful.
Yeah, but I even then, like some of them, I'm like trying to spell it out phonetically, and I'm like, there is no phonetic spelling for this the way I would do it. So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best. That's all we can do.
All right. Well, take it away.
All right. So, as you know, this is taking place in Turkey. So, a Turkish man who walked free from prison despite the fact that he had murdered 2 of his wives.
Holy crap.
What?
Yeah, he murdered 2 of his wives, and he got to walk free from prison. And many activists came out to say that this illustrates how the Turkish authorities fail to protect women who are at risk from femicide. And apparently that's rampant in the country.
Oh, that's awful.
So this man's name was Nekati Akpinar, and he stabbed his first wife to death in 1984. Then his second wife, he burned her with an iron until she died.
Oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, and that happened in 2003, so 19 years later.
Oh,
how?
good.
Yeah.
The image of
burning someone death
with an iron until they die?
Can you imagine? Like, that's how she died, and that was the second wife that he murdered. So he did go to prison for this. Okay, I don't have I don't
That's
have
like
all the
unimaginable
details.
torture. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I don't have all the details, but I mean, again, this, like, as they were saying, femicide is a big problem in this country, and I remember seeing things on the news years ago about women who were basically set on fire because the men didn't want to be married to them anymore.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm assuming this is coming from the same general thought process, that this guy's like just burning her. I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh, awful.
So again, he was sent to prison for this, but he was released under conditions in October of 2020 due to COVID-19 measures that were in place at the time.
You're kidding me. Come on, really?
Yes.
Oh, God.
He was allowed to serve the remainder of his sentence at his home that he shared with his third wife.
A bitch married him after this?
God.
Right? Her name was Mutlu Menekşe, and they lived in Saruhanlı, Turkey. Now,
at what point did they get married?
I don't know. There's not a lot of details. Again, this is similar situation. There's not a lot of public news in terms of all this, like these details. But a lot of prisoners here in the U.S. get married as well.
This is true. But I can't imagine how many of them actually murdered 2 wives before they got murdered.
Right.
I don't know. People are crazy.
But yeah, exactly. And who knows? Maybe he has like a certain amount of wealth that... So maybe there is like a dowry or something. Maybe he had something to offer another family if they let him marry their daughter. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. We really don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the fine details of Turkish society. So
fair enough.
Now, however, Mutlu's dead body was found buried in the garden of a property in that district where they lived that following December.
Ugh.
So he wasn't even out for 2 to 3 months before he killed his third wife.
That's twisted.
Stop fucking getting married, dude.
So the third killing was discovered after his own daughter reported him to police after he ordered and threatened her to bury the body.
Oh my fucking God.
What? Holy crap.
Yeah. While he was being questioned by police, this 58-year-old man confessed to fatally hitting her in the head with a blunt object during an argument.
Oh.
The autopsy showed that his 48-year-old mother of 2 was brutally tortured to death. She suffered continuous traumas at different times. There were various colors of bruising on her body as well as internal bleeding. There were severe 2nd and 3rd degree burns to her body. She had a fracture in her neck vertebrae as well as other bone fractures.
Oh, God.
There was bleeding in her spinal cord and bleeding in her brain.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. This poor woman.
Yeah, she also suffered organ failures such as kidney and lung failure. So this guy, for the months that he was out before her body was discovered, just basically brutalized her.
Awful. And you have to, like, imagine how bad the protections are existing that she couldn't get help.
Right. And again, this is his third wife that he's killed. It's so fucked up. And
Deeply.
as you said, either she had no idea who she was marrying, or her family, who maybe arranged it, didn't know who she was marrying, or she had zero other options. So this case triggered public outrage and sent women's rights activists up in arms as it emerged that Akpinar had already been sentenced to life twice for murdering his other two wives.
Holy shit.
It's fucking crazy to me. So
it's like no one ever looked at his record or tried.
Exactly.
It's insane.
And again, that's assuming you can find that in that country. It's, I mean, you'd think you would be able to, but I don't know how buckled down they are with controlling the media. It could be like North Korea.
Right.
So Akpınar's case is a real-world demonstration of why femicides remain so prevalent in Turkey despite the introduction of legal measures to protect women over the years. Just days before Mutlu's murder, a mother of 3 was fatally shot in Ankara by her ex-husband, who had similarly benefited from a conditional release due to the pandemic.
Holy shit.
It's so fucked up. First off, why are you letting people out just because of the pandemic? I don't get that. We didn't let anybody out.
Right.
Crazy.
I think we did, but it wasn't violent offenders.
Okay. Because I mean, I understand the dangers of it because they're in enclosed spaces. They have nowhere to go. They're close to each other. So I sort of see releasing them. But again, like you said, they weren't violent offenders.
Right. And I'm honestly pro release of like nonviolent drug offenders. Like, yeah, let them out. Don't let the rapist sit in there and die of COVID. Like that.
Right.
My hot take is I'm so cool with that.
Yeah, exactly. So women's groups had campaigned fervently against the pandemic-related release of perpetrators of violent crime against women, but obviously they got nowhere. Now, even worse, their president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, pulled Turkey out of the Istanbul Convention, a Council of Europe agreement to combat violence against women. He pulled them out in 2021. Even though femicide and domestic violence remained such a pressing issue in his country.
And he just doesn't give a fuck.
That just goes to show he doesn't care.
So fucked up. More than 300 women were killed in Turkey in 2022 by their spouses, partners, exes, or male relatives, according to a tally by the We Will Stop Femicide platform, a civic group dedicated to fighting violence against women. 300.
That is an awful, awful number.
It's more than one a day.
Unacceptable.
Yeah, more than one a day. In a country, I don't know what their population is off the top of my head, but still, one a day that blows my fucking mind.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I mean, honestly, I know the statistics in our country aren't great either, but...
No, I would argue that per capita, we have to be better off than that. I mean, I would assume per capita our stats are better, but it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Kenan Galu, head of the Women's Association Federation of Turkey, stressed that Turkish law lacks the concept of gender-based violence, which hampers efforts to combat male violence against women. She said, quote, "That's why offenders get away with their crimes, benefiting from various loopholes in the penal system, just as in the murder of Mutlu Meneski. Her murderer killed twice and walked free to kill a third time, and we know he'll walk free again someday," unquote. How terrifying is that? Yeah, how terrifying is that thought?
That's absolutely awful.
A key problem is that authorities often fail to act efficiently the first time a woman reports abuse or to properly enforce the protective measures that are in place.
Mm-hmm.
A striking example, Beyza Dogan, a 16-year-old from Istanbul, was shot dead by her stalker despite 35 complaints and a restraining order against the man.
Holy
shit.
She did everything. God. Holy shit.
Similarly, 52-year-old Hulya Salvaki was shot dead by her husband in Izmir, Western Turkey, though she had lodged 4 criminal complaints about being threatened after filing for a divorce.
Wow, they really just don't give a shit.
They do not. Prosecutors from the courts charged Akpinar with the intentional killing of a woman through torture. According to... Right? How fucked up. Like that they have it specified. It's not even just murder.
Yeah. That it's such a thing that it has its own charge and probably has less of a punishment.
Exactly. So according to lawyer Yasin Arkak, who is representing the Mutlu family, the first trial hearing was supposed to be held in December of 2024. However, there are absolutely no updates and nothing else I could find at this time. So we don't even know if he'll be found. I mean, I'm assuming he's going to go back to jail at this point. The pandemic is over. He was already sentenced to life twice. But you know what? As we heard last episode, in some countries, it's not illegal to kill other people from another country. So here we are.
Yeah, that's just disgusting.
Clearly, the murder of women are not taken seriously enough in the country of Turkey.
I'm looking up statistics right now.
Okay, good.
In 2021, it was actually lower. Like the per capita murder rate of women.
Really?
Is lower in Turkey than it is in the United States.
Oh my God. That's terrifying. So basically,
70% of all cases of femicide in the top 25 most populous high-income countries found that, 70% of all of the cases are in the U.S.
Okay. So I take back what I was saying about it being just about Turkey and their culture. Wow.
It's about, well, it is for them. Definitely, it sounds like.
Right. It's definitely a bad situation there because, like, the men aren't even going to prison for it, or at least not for very long.
Right, and that these are like brutal murder cases, and there's probably lots of factors that, like, maybe for them it's the culture, maybe for us it's that guns are so easily available and murder is so easy to commit.
Right. Yeah, possibly. But
Who knows? I don't know what that's like in Turkey.
Right. But that is the case of Nakati Akpinar.
Damn, I hope he rots in hell.
Me too.
Yeah, no kidding.
I wish I could be the one to bring him there.
Truth.
Right? All right, Jameson, you are up.
All right. We're going to round these cases up with the case of Uma Aguilera. On January 22nd, 2024, Eduardo Aguilera, his wife, and his 9-year-old daughter, Uma, were on their way to a medical appointment when they were approached by criminals in Lomas de Zamora, Argentina.
Okay.
In response to the situation, Uma's father, who is a member of the federal police and bodyguard for the Minister of Security, accelerated the vehicle and the robbers fired shots.
And considering you said this is the case of Uma and that's her 9-year-old daughter, it's the child who's getting killed, so that sucks.
The perp shot twice at the rear window where Uma was sitting, and she was hit in the hand and head.
Ugh.
The 9-year-old girl was taken to the emergency room at the Gandolfo Hospital, where she was stabilized and transferred by helicopter to Chicuro, where she unfortunately passed away.
That sucks.
It's always heart-wrenching, especially when they're that young.
Well, I don't know what would have happened had he not accelerated away in the car, but maybe that would have been the better option. But considering he was a bodyguard for like a political figure, maybe it would have turned out exactly the same way. Or maybe all three of them would have died.
I think he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't.
Yeah, that really sucks.
During the funeral ceremony, there were moments of deep pain and sadness, with the words of the girl's mother, also a police officer, being particularly heart-wrenching as she called out, quote, "I want to stay with her. My daughter. No."
Oh.
That just pulls on all the heartstrings.
I mean, you see that stuff in movies where people just like are at the side of a coffin freaking out. The idea of seeing that in real life would fuck me up.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be able to recover from that. Following the incident, an investigation identified the criminals as occupants of a black Toyota Corolla, which they had stolen minutes before.
Minutes before. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yep. So it was on the fly, not really thought through execution.
Or it was more of a like not so much on the fly, like they had the plan, they were going to do it, but then like, oh shit, they're leaving early maybe kind of thing, or they would have
Yeah,
been more
right. Factors
prepared.
against.
Yeah.
Yep. Fingerprints collected by the Buenos Aires Police Department helped identify the members of the gang that killed Uma. They wore civilian clothes during the time of the crime. The slaying of Uma follows the violent deaths of two 16-year-olds who earlier in that week had been killed in the Buenos Aires province. The police soon reported that a 22-year-old man had been arrested and they were looking for his other accomplices.
Okay, so they only caught one of them. I'm sorry, you probably will
Cor-
get to it.
Correct. Yes, correct. So they did catch one of the guys.
Okay.
Argentina has one of the lowest murder rates in South America. It is 4.2 out of every 100,000 inhabitants, according to the government data from 2022. In mid 2023, security was ranked as the second biggest concern among Argentinians at 38%, behind inflation at 55%, according to a study at the University of San Andreas. An increase of murders and violent killings during robberies over the last few years has reignited debate about public safety and putting the issue at the top of the political agenda, which makes perfect sense in my point of view.
Well, I mean, just imagine like a bodyguard for a congressman here in the U.S. getting shot down, like gunned down, or his family getting gunned down. It would be a lockdown here. So yeah, I can
Yeah.
see where
Oh,
that
yeah.
country needs to step up its game.
So in August of 2023, campaigning for the peso primaries was briefly suspended for 4 days after the murder of an 11-year-old girl who was attacked by two young men who took her backpack and beat her in the street of Greater Buenos Aires.
Holy shit!
Oh,
That's got to be horrifying. I mean, how do you beat somebody to death with a backpack? Like,
No,
what?
did they beat her with the backpack, or did they just take her backpack?
Oh, so they beat her in the street.
Right. That yeah.
I
So they just bludgeoned her to death with probably their hands, but or maybe the backpack. I don't know. That's fucked up though.
I don't know. From my point of view, it looked like they might have used the backpack at some point.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, who knows? Be
but
honest though, like the more I learn about, I hate to say this because I know most of the people from Argentina are probably good people, but this kind of those kind of stories make me not want to go there.
yeah, no, I completely agree. Political leaders, social organizers, and legal experts have regularly debated about the causes of the increase of common crimes, with the potential reasons being deteriorated social economic setting of ex-convicts, the lack of efficiency in proactive policing,
Okay, so police are
corrupt
reactive. That makes sense in that
correct,
kind of yeah. I gotcha.
corrupt judges, and problems with the penal system is also possible reasons that they point at for things increasing.
I can see
mm-hmm.
that. Yeah.
Debate has reopened more recently about a political push to lower the age of criminal responsibility from where it's at right now at 16 to 14 years old.
And I can see that too in a country where violent crime is that out of control. Yeah, I can see
Right.
that.
And if like gangs are recruiting people really young.
As of now, those who are convicted between the ages of 16 and 18 are prosecuted under a separate youth criminal liability law.
Okay. I mean, I guess that makes sense in and of itself too, because you don't want to try them as full adults, but you can't charge them as children either.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. I actually like that idea.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that way they're still held accountable and it doesn't completely get swept away.
Right, because I mean, here we have that debate every time like a 13-year-old shoots and kills somebody. It's a whole, do we charge them as an adult? Do they get the mandatory minimum kind of thing? And it's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I like that there's a separate thing. That's a good idea.
So, a year after the tragic events with Uma, 4 individuals were arrested and charged. Axel Emilio Pelusa Rojas, who was 20 years old, Miguel Pastor Potato Romero Molinas, who was 20 years old, Gomaro Paraguayo Romero Molinos, who was 17, and Axel Acuna Vega, who was 21. All of them faced charges of aggravated robbery with the use of a firearm as well as homicide.
Mm.
Although a trial is anticipated, no date has been set for any of the future proceedings.
I'm surprised the government hasn't just taken them out. But again,
Yes, right. Yeah, exactly. And that is the case of Uma Aguilera.
yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us. Once again, I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And I'm Joyous Dead.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.